Good morning, it's Martin at PendlePerformance. We've got a stunning Volkswagen T6 on the dyno today. This being the Euro6 engine with the AdBlue. This is the 105 brake course model using the Delphi DCM 6.2 control unit. Now it's paramount when tuning these engines. It's not about just tuning the engine, it's about tuning for the complete vehicle setup. And we have talked in depth about this, how to have the delivery of the power and torque correct, not just to suit the engine, but to suit the complete drivetrain of the vehicle. And you've got to set them up. This has got big wheels on as well. You know, you've got to think about the vehicles. You know, they might not just be a panel van, they might be converted to a motorhome where they've got a lot of weight in. They might be fully loaded up with people's belongings when they're going on holiday. So the weight of them will differ, they put big wheels on them. So it's not just about tuning the engine, you've got to tune for the complete vehicle setup and the drivetrain. This engine will produce some good torque in the lower RPM range, but with it being a 5-speed gearbox and the big wheels and whatnot, it is too much torque going through the drivetrain. So you've got to have smooth, progressive torque delivery. We have talked in depth about it before as well. Now, these engines, these Euro6 engines, the AdBlue engine, using the Delphi DCM 6.2, they are a very complex engine control unit to tune correctly and, more importantly, safely. Within the engine control unit, there's not just the fueling maps and the charge pressure maps and various things like that to get power out of them. There's a lot of correction maps or protection maps, as we call them. What is keeping it's analysing all the input from the sensors on your engine, such as the EGT, exhaust gas temperature, intake air temperature sensor. It's logging all them all the time, and there's correction maps for them. So if it sees it going past a threshold limit, it will then pull the fueling back to save your engine. Now, some tuning companies will see these correction maps or protection maps, and because obviously they're holding the power back, they'll just tune the map out. So it's running then without the protection or the correction map for the EGT, or the intake air temperature, or the coolant temperature, or the fuel temperature. EGT is one of the most important ones. So the correct way how we tune these is we completely recalibrate the EGT correction map with inside the engine control unit. We alter the map axis, so we allow it to run the safe EGTs, which will let this engine run perfectly safe. And then once it hits our limit, what we'll let them run to, we'll safely and slowly pull the fueling back, just to keep the EGTs at the required, what we require from these engines. And they're absolutely bulletproof and safe. And that is a correctly tuned protection map for the EGT. Like I say, a lot of tuning companies come along and they'll just tune all the map out so it'll allow it to go to whatever EGT it wants. And then that's why you end up getting people blowing turbos up and various stuff like that. Or they'll let it get up to like 900 and then all of a sudden they'll just drop it off. So it'll reach 900, then all of a sudden it'll instantly drop all the fueling off. That can also have a negative effect on your turbo, because it's getting up to 900 C temperature, and all of a sudden it'll just instantly drop all the fuel off. And then when it comes back under 900, it'll instantly pull all the fuel back. So you get a back and forward of the fuel on it, which is not good. So you get your turbo boosting, then it'll start stalling because the fuel stopped, and then it'll start boosting again because the fuel's back on. So that is not the correct way how to do it as well. So we do calibrate these engines. PendlePerformance do calibrate these engines safely and correctly, and we've been tuning them for many years. We'll have a look at the dyno graphs now. We did a base dyno run on this, then we did a software update. There was a main dealership software update available for the engine control unit, so we applied the latest software update. Then we performed a static service regen of the BPF filter. We readapted the learned values in the electronic actuator of the turbo, and we readapted the AGI solenoid, and then we custom tuned it. So we'll have a look at the graphs now. That's it as it came to us. She's made 112 brake horse and 262 Newton torque, and you can see the power curve gets a little bit bumpy up here, Had slightly high BPS at Lord, not massively, but slightly high, but that's where you can generally see this up there. So we data logged the vehicle, we did an in-depth data log on it, analysed all the variables of the engine, make sure everything was running safe, and then we proceeded to custom tune the vehicle, and we'll load up our tuned graph of it, which is absolutely superb. I'll overlay it over the standard one as well. And that's the vehicle tune. We had 165 brake force and 322 newton meters torque. Again, the numbers are irrelevant. All engines, all vehicles do make differ, you know. I get people phoning me and saying, I've got a T6, 1 or 2 brake force, what power is it going to make? You know, they can make anything. I say anything from 160 brake horse, 155, 160, up to 178. You know, they do differ. It's not about tuning them for the brake horsepower, it's about tuning the engine. So the engine's correctly and safely tuned. Whatever numbers it makes on the dyno, it makes on the dyno. They do always differ. So, you know, yes, I do get people phoning me up and saying, what power can my vehicle make? And I say, it's impossible for me to tell you until I get it on dyno. As soon as I get it on dyno and do as dyno runs, then I'll be able to tell you what power it makes. If this, I mean, I've tuned one of these a couple of weeks ago and it made 172. Now, if this customer of this one would have phoned me up, said, oh yeah, I've done one. Last week it made 172 brake horse. And obviously I've tuned this one today, and it's only made 165. So if I'd have told him 172, this customer could complain saying, well, you told me on phone it was going to make 172 brake horse, but mine's only made 165. They do vary, they do massively vary. It's not about the numbers, it's about correctly, and most importantly, safely tuning the engine. So that engine is correctly tuned. Now we talk about the torque delivery for the 5-speed gearbox, and the 5-speed gearbox is perfectly fine. Don't listen to people when they say, oh, the 5-speed gearbox is weak and whatnot. Yes, it is weak if tuning companies come along and tune them incorrectly. If they are tuned correctly, the gearboxes are absolute perfect. They're absolutely perfect. And we can see, if we just show you the bottom scale, this is as RPM, 0, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. And we can see as torque, which is this one, we can see we're making really progressive torque delivery. Instead of making us peak torque at 2,000 RPM, which these engines will make, the engine will safely make it, but the drivetrain won't. Instead of making us peak torque at 2,000 RPM, we actually make us peak torque well, we can see here. Peak torque, 322 newton meters torque at 2,900 RPM. So just before 3,000 RPM. Now the sweet spot for these is around about 300 newton meters torque at 2,000 RPM. So tuning companies, if you tune these, you know, if you aim for around about 300 newton meters torque at 2,000 RPM, really smooth and progressive, with your peak torque being around about the 3,000 RPM, you have no problem with the drivetrain, or you will have no juddering issues or anything like that. It's quite simple to do. You can do it on your torque to injection quantity maps. You can do it on your torque limiter map with inside the engine control unit. It is quite easy to do. It takes a little bit of trial and error to get it absolutely bang on. We've obviously been tuning these since they first came out, so hard tuning on them is absolutely world leading. It's on point. So that's today's job, tuning the Volkswagen T6 102 brake horse, the Euro 6 AdBlue engine. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend, everyone.